to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast with TJ and Sonny.
Hello and welcome to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast. My name is TJ McConaughey, and I am joined tonight by another special guest. Sonny should be back with us next week from his temporary hiatus, and we're looking forward to that. But tonight I have a special guest interview / co-host. I want you to welcome to the podcast out there, randos, Tim Cryer. From an organization called TreeHouse. Tim, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on the show.
Yeah, we're excited to have you on the show. Tim, what is your background in youth work?
Yeah, so like most great youth workers, I have no youth ministry degree. I got a business degree, and all through college and then into my business degree, I was volunteering at Young Life, and it became what was most important to me. And I would drive to work hating life, and then I would drive to Young Life loving life, and I made this switch. I invested in that call that was pretty clear, and ever since, it's been about 15 years that I've been doing youth ministry in churches, Young Life, now TreeHouse. So it's a great ride. It's where I'm at. It's where I'm called.
Yeah, I like how you said, like most great youth workers and youth pastors out there, this isn't what you went to school for. And you know what? That's what we're finding more and more on our forums, on our Facebook page and Instagram. There's so many guys out there who catch the bug after they've already went to school for something else. And what I love about the tribe of youth workers is that we kind of accept everybody, like I never hear youth pastors really talk about like what school and what degree they got. I thought that would be so much more important than it actually is. But when youth workers get together, there's never a time like, hey, where did you go to school? Or what did you get your degree in? Or, who did you study under? It's kind of, it just doesn't exist. And most great youth workers I've noticed are guys who, they catch it late. And so can you just describe to us what it was like to say, you know what, I think I'm going to do something completely different with my life. How did that decision go down?
Yeah, well, at first I think so often we put youth pastors in a box and this is what they're like. And what I found is some of the best volunteers and youth pastors you would think would be terrible with kids just by your first interaction. They're maybe dry, or they just don't, they're not the ones to be dancing in the middle of the room, but they show up and they're consistent and they love kids. And so I just think so often we do a disservice to youth, the position of youth ministry when we think of it as one archetype. So let's see. So the question was, how did that decision come about? What was that like? Well, I remember, so at TreeHouse, you have to raise your salary. And I remember saying to God, I'll do anything you want me to, except that I won't raise my salary. So it was a big jump. I just remember I was called. It was very clear to me that this was the path I needed to go on. And there were many people who felt like this was the right path, but there were also people who felt like, you're crazy. You just paid X amount for your degree.
Yeah.
And you're not going to make anything close to what you could make if you follow the business path. But, like most people who are called, that overpowered anything. And I wouldn't change it for anything.
Yep. Yeah. And I think that there are those people who kind of look at youth workers and like, are you crazy? I mean, I had so many conversations with my dad because he just didn't understand it. Like, he didn't understand that people actually, that this could be a career and you could do this with your life. And so, for him, he thought it was kind of just volunteer work that somehow I had gotten lost in. And so I know the feeling of, are you crazy? Are you crazy? And the idea of, having a business degree. I mean, man, I know so many youth pastors who are always trying to hustle in a certain way. And if you even had a business degree, they probably would run from youth ministry in a second. But God's got them there and is keeping them there. Well, that's cool, Tim. I'm looking forward to our show tonight. And right now I'm done with all this introductory chit chat. Let's get to the show.
Join the conversation on Facebook and Instagram. And when you subscribe to this podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating. We desperately need your approval.
Question of the week. We've already kind of started question of the week. We're kind of introducing our friend Tim Cryer here from TreeHouse. And what we need to do is, I just want to hear about what TreeHouse is. And it's a nonprofit organization, obviously. But what do you guys do, and how does it work, and what is it? I guess that's like 10 questions. But why don't you go ahead and just try to answer 3 of them.
So TreeHouse is a faith-based nonprofit, like you said, with our mission being to end hopelessness among teens. And so that's a huge vision, but we think that it's worth fighting for. And so hopelessness looks a number of ways. There's no zip code for it. There's no type of kid it's all kids experience hopelessness, either for a moment, or maybe it is systematic and they're experiencing it in their family system or in society. There are things that are causing them to be hopeless. So you see it displayed as depression. You see it displayed in broken families or promiscuity, drug abuse, whatever it is. You see hopelessness. It looks a lot of different ways. But if you look at the nation, there's this question that the CDC asks that they give to all school kids across the nation. And it's really around depression. And do you feel alone? Do you feel like you don't have anyone to talk to? Do you feel depressed and hopeless is really the question. And 31% of all students 12 to 18 say, yes, I feel that. And so this is really an epidemic. And I think anyone that works with youth can probably point to a number of the students they're mentoring or that are at their program that are experiencing hopelessness. And so really, I think so often as a church, we feel like, what can we do in this instance? How can we truly help? So really what we do is we come along and partner with churches and nonprofits, and we have an extensive training and resourcing that we do, but we really start with support groups. So we help churches develop support groups for teens and really giving them, I relate a lot to Sonny when he talks about what he does with students, really trying to provide emotional language, providing them a safe space, providing them the ability to not feel alone. And so really doing that for the community. And so typically the support groups that we help churches start aren't faith-based. They're there for any kid from any background. And so we often help churches partner with schools, partner with counties for referrals, maybe even doing support groups in the schools. And so we really try to get that church to think about how they can support their youth, yes, because they're experiencing hopelessness in some way, but also there are youth in the community that can be connected to your church who may never walk in your doors if you provide that. So that's the first thing that we really work towards. Then we
So these support groups, really quick, so these support groups, what do they look like? Are they kind of like small groups, or are they more like traditional, like Young Life programs? What does a support group look like?
Thank you. Yeah, so a support group, if you've ever been in like an AA or similar, you sit in a circle, and there's usually probably the best numbers about 7 teens, and you start by every teen checking in with feelings, and you hand out feeling sheets. They list 5 to 10 feelings they felt in the last 7 days, and then they rate their week 0 to 10. and then they say whether they want to take time, and then you pass around, everyone gets a chance to check in, and then at the end you have 3-4 kids that want to share, so you have them share, and the goal is to get other kids to relate and say, yeah, I felt that way, and really focus on the feeling. So if one kid just failed a test and feels like a failure, maybe another kid had his dad walk out on him and can relate. It's totally different topic, but felt like a failure. And so how do you connect kids and make them feel like, oh, I'm not the only one feeling this way? And it really, I mean, you can walk into any one of our 38 sites that we have now, and kids are sharing about significant things that are going on. I've gone into churches and just displayed how this can happen, and kids will be so honest if you just provide a structure and a platform and confidential space for them to share. And so a lot of healing comes from just finding that support, and they're all lay person led. So I'm a mental health therapist, but they're not run by therapists. They're run by youth pastors and volunteers and community leaders. And so that's a lot of what our online training and platform provides, is that ability to, as a church, build up people in your congregation that can run some of these type of support groups.
Wow. I'm thinking about this just as you're bringing it out here, and man, so many churches need this. I mean, like the idea, like we got it kind of, right? We got the idea of small groups, and we've got the idea of kind of those accountability groups kind of built into there. But the idea of a true support group, and it feels like almost like, I wish Sonny was on the show tonight. And I think you do too, because like you said, you relate better to Sonny. But
I wouldn't say better.
Okay.
Don't sell yourself short. I was a youth pastor. I'm on both sides.
Okay, good. I'm glad you're on both sides. But Sonny, this is a call out to you. I wish you were here to field some of these things. But I do love this idea of the support. And it sounds a little bit less like small groups and a little bit more like an AA group. Is that?
Yeah. So I would say. Yeah, so I would say support a small group is directive. Like you're something you're going to teach that night, right? So you're going over a Bible verse, you're kind of getting kids, trying to get them to talk about that. And then through that, sometimes kids open up, sometimes not. This is non-directive. So you have no topic that you're really covering other than the feelings that they're experiencing. And so often kids don't have language around their feelings and experiences. And so really when they're 12, you're teaching a lot around just feelings and what those are. Anger is a second emotion. There's an emotion under anger. All these things, and just teaching. And then when they get a little older, they're able to process that and talk about it in a group. And so it's really about that emotional regulation and skills, and a place to really just talk about whatever is going on in their life. Wow. So sometimes kids are crying, sometimes they're laughing. It's really where kids take it.
Super generous in the way that, it goes in without an agenda. And I think that's just, sometimes youth pastors, we get a little too agenda driven. And yet, since you've been on both sides, you could probably agree with that, is that there's a place you're shooting for. But if where you're shooting for is support and encouragement, then they get to have the freedom, and you're being generous to give them that ability to sort of, run the support group and it to go where they want it to go. So I love that. So you guys get these support groups going in churches, and they're run by lay people. And then what would be the next step?
So then we look at really the programming that you have and capacity that you have, because the thing that limits every church that I talk to a number of churches, is capacity. I don't, as a youth pastor, don't see how I can manage one more thing. And so we really try to, figure out who can lead this within your congregation, a volunteer or staff person who has the capacity, at 5-10 hours a week, can do an effective support group where they're working with the county and the school and the church and doing that. And then we look at, how do you start building up individuals in your church who can start to mentor students that you're now seeing come in your doors? Because you're getting kids from foster care, you're getting kids, sent to you from the school, and schools love this stuff, because the thing that they're struggling with typically is social emotional support of students. they just don't have the resources typically. So I sat around in a rural community in Iowa this week and just shared what we do, and there was a nonprofit partnering with us, and the school ate it up. They were asking, when can you come in? We'll give you a class. You can start to work through doing support groups and teaching the assets. So we have curriculum on the 40 developmental assets by Search Institute also. So there's a it's a great way to open your church up to be a support to the community. And then often they're open to saying, hey, we also have a youth group. We also do these events and these camps. If you kids are interested in that, let us know. If you want a mentor from our church, we have that available. So you really get to interact with the community in a different way than churches typically do. Wow. And so that's really, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, and let me ask you some questions here too. Coming from where you come from, young life, youth ministry, mental health. I mean, you're kind of the perfect audience member for the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast, by the way. Like you kind of you cover all of what we're trying to go after. So I'm glad we found you. I'm glad we found each other. But
love story.
Yeah, it is. It's a love story. But what is it right now that you get to do in your capacity that you didn't get to do as a youth pastor? And what is that?
I would say it's the sitting in a county meeting, talking to parole officers and social workers and talking to principal, just talking to police officers and them seeing value in what I'm doing. So often I think they think of youth group as, it's that thing that the church does, and that don't talk to us about that. But when you talk about, providing social emotional support to kids that are truant, to kids that are struggling, to kids that are, have emotional behavioral disorders, that's when people's ears perk up and they want to be part of it. So I love that stuff. And then really you get to see kids come to know Christ that would never get that chance otherwise. Wow. And it starts by just providing a safe place that's non-judgmental and safe for them to talk. Man, this would, I wish Sonny was here because he would love to hear this stuff. He is constantly in a place where he's wondering, how do we get the church into these capacities? How do we get the church outside of our own walls, outside of our buildings, outside of our programs, outside of the endless kind of, scheduling that we do, and get just to that purity of let's go find people who would never darken the door of a church. And it sounds like that's just totally what TreeHouse is about. It sounds what TreeHouse is kind of what you guys are doing over there. So that's awesome. That's super, super cool. So is there a way, so someone's out there, and we have a lot of youth workers, youth pastors, and program directors who kind of listen to this show a lot. And is there a way that they can? What's their first step into getting TreeHouse, or getting to know what you guys are doing, and maybe saying, hey, maybe in our context we can be about that? Yeah, and I would say, yes, we are all about getting out and making space for those who would never darken the door. But there are also this reality that we're not tapping into some of the hopelessness that our own kids are feeling.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so how do we even provide space for that anxiety to succeed, for all those things that sometimes when we run these directive teaching things that we do that are important, we don't provide the space for them outside of the ones we can kind of do the mentoring with. But there's all these kids that don't get that. So how do we provide this? So I just want to say that. But what would be the first step is to go.
Well, hold on. I want to comment on what you just said. I love that you corrected that, because, when we think of fringe kids, oftentimes we divide in our head, like there's the non-fringe kids and then there's the fringe kids, right? And sometimes you can divide it like this. There's like the outreach kids, and then there's the church kids, right? Like, and so we kind of have these arbitrary like lines that we sort of draw between the different groups and different audiences that we deal with. And I kind of love what you just said there, because what you're talking about is not making just space for a demographic, but making a place where any person who's experiencing hopelessness can find resources, can find help, can find support. And you're right. You're totally right, because so many kids who you'd look at and you'd never say that's a fringe kid, they're dealing with really hard stuff in their brains, really, really hard stuff in their lives. And it is oftentimes the kid who's projecting that perfect image, who's got that flawless Instagram, who's, 4.0, but on the inside, man, they're hurting. And so I love that you just kind of had to, you corrected there, because oftentimes we think hopelessness comes from situation, and it does, but sometimes hopelessness can arise from what we would seemingly look at and say that's a good situation to be in. Hopelessness can arise in those moments, and there's more pressure to conceal when it looks like everything's going good. And so I love that you just said, no, this isn't just for the kids who, are on the outside. This is for the kids on the inside. And I think that's a huge correction. Thank you for that. First steps.
Yeah. And I think it informed me. So when I would do support group, it informed my teaching, because I got to see past the facades, and I could teach to what was at the heart of their anxiety or worry or fears. And it provided really meaningful one-to-one meetings with kids, and the ability to platform then to talk further about things that potentially they never would share otherwise. So anyways, there's a number of things that I've found. I'll never do a youth program again without support groups. It just provides such an in-depth ability to tap into those things you want to get to.
So really quick, I just have to ask you a question, man, and I love this. I love where this discussion's going. But have you ever read The Ragamuffin Gospel by Brennan Manning? Have you ever read that book?
I have had people tell me. Today I was scanning through books to read. I saw it on my phone, and then I downloaded some sci-fi novel. I was like, I could read something edifying, or I could just get some mind candy.
Such a youth worker
mind candy.
Tim, that is such a youth worker move right there, is what that is. It's like, oh man, yes, I understand what that feels like and what that is. But a lot of what we're talking about, a lot of what we feel in this stuff, man, I recommend it. Randos, go out and buy a copy. I know that title sounds weird, right? It sounds like a Muppet thing, like Ragamuffins, It's an older book, but it's still incredibly relevant, and I love his take on it. And he saw what was happening in AA and saying this should be more of what the church is, and so it sounds like that's right where you're existing at. So that's a shout out to that book, Tim. Once you finish your sci-fi novel, maybe pick this one up, and we'll go from there. But let's get to the next steps. How would there's a rando out there listening saying, I'm vibing so hard here with what Tim's saying. How do you get in contact? What's the first steps?
So the first step is go to our website. It is www.treehousehope.org. There is a mission video on there that right on the front. It's about 3 minutes. It will describe how we think about transformation. And really this idea that so often we want to change behavior. So, hey, watch porn less. Hey, smoke weed less. Sleep around less. But underneath that are these beliefs that kids have. And so how do you get to those beliefs? And that's really what all of our program is about. How do you speak truth into those beliefs? So that is really helpful. That's a first step. The second step is if you go to how to get involved, then you can say, oh man, I should have this. I'm on a podcast telling people how to do this. You go into and you can say start a treehouse, and then there's an email. You just send an email through the website and we will respond to that. And so really what that's just saying is I'm interested. I want to know more. It's not saying I'm in. It is just this conversation, and we understand, and we're working with a number of churches to go from I'm interested to that we're officially partnered. It can be a journey, and so we walk that journey with churches, and I obviously anytime you do anything like this, it involves sometimes a board, the executive pastor or lead pastor, and so it just starts with that entry level inquiry, and then from there we take it. We're also, in the fall, we're going to start giving away free assessments to churches where it's like a youth risk assessment. So it'll ask questions around some behaviors that show that there's some hopelessness happening potentially in your own youth ministry. And so we would give you a link. You would give this link to all your students in your ministry. It would be confidential. And then we would send you back a report and say, here are where your kids are at, and here are the ways that they're potentially experiencing hopelessness. And then from there, that's a great start. From there, we can talk about, okay, so what are the strategies we can do to start to address some of that we're facing in your own youth ministry. So those are two ways. So one is just going on, click start a TreeHouse, send an email. The second one is through that email, you can ask about the assessment, and we can set that up for you for the fall when kids, summer is wonky. You got your core kids, some kids leave, but in the fall, kind of everyone comes back, and that's just a great time to do an assessment. So those are two ways. So watch the video, send an email. We can give you that free assessment, and you can kind of get a good feel, a pulse of where your youth ministry is at.
I love it. Yeah, definitely, randos, check it out for sure. We, as a youth pastor, there is no shortage of good nonprofits that you can be a part of. But if you vibe with this, I'm using the word vibe like I say it all the time, and I hardly ever say it. But if the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast is your podcast, this sounds like the nonprofit or a nonprofit that you want to be involved with, TreeHouse. And so definitely take a look at that and see if it's a good fit for where you guys are. And it sounds like there's people waiting and ready to sort of take you through that steps. And it sounds like it's a process. So you don't have to worry about getting time shared or something along those lines, all of a sudden getting like the feeling and like, I'm going to do this, and having that feeling of waking up next morning, like, what did I just sign up for? It sounds like they're just as worried about fit as you are. So they want to be in a good partnership with churches. So that's great. All right, so we're going to continue here. If you guys didn't know, we got Tim Cryer on the show from TreeHouse, and he just gave us kind of the lowdown on what he's doing over there. But we're going to ask now. We're going to move into our other segments here, and this is Tales from the Fringe, which by far is our fan favorite. It's just good old-fashioned storytelling. And one thing I know about youth workers and youth pastors and people who work with youth is there's just so many good stories. There's so many good stories, and like that's the thing that youth pastors do. We don't get together and talk about our degrees, right? Like we get together and we oftentimes go straight into story mode. And sometimes that can turn into a little bit of a peeing contest, which we're okay with here in the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast. Sonny and I ran a voting contest for the beginning of these things. So we're not going to do that tonight, but we want to hear from you, Tim. What is your Fringe Youth Worker story? What is your Fringe story? Or your tale from the Fringe?
So at TreeHouse, we often provide transportation. So I met Jessica at our first TreeHouse meeting. I was launching a new TreeHouse. She jumped in our van. We took her to program, and she was excited to be part of it. But, first time to meet, really didn't know much about her. But as she kept coming, she started to tell her story, and I learned that she had come from Chicago and that she had grown up with her mother in prison for most of her life and was raised by an aunt, and grew up in a really tough neighborhood of West Chicago, and then had moved into Plymouth, Minnesota, which the year I started that TreeHouse was ranked the #1 place to live in America. And so kids are driving Beamers to school, wearing shoes that cost more than my car. Really a huge switch for her. And so she would walk into school and just feel totally alone. And so she started to reveal that, and then she had really high anxiety and would deal with that through drugs and alcohol. And so it just really struggled, but just kept coming and kept really responding to the love of God and really responding to her mentor and just walking with her. And she would start to share for the first time and talk about emotions at support group. And then, it just, you just walk with kids in it and love them no matter what. And through senior year, she graduated finally, and we went to her graduation, so excited. And so often as kids who don't have the support system just got stuck at home and didn't know what to do next. And I just saw some of the behaviors kind of spiraling her. And so she made the decision to move out of her house. So she moved out of her parents' house, and we had an extra bedroom. She moved in with us, and it was, she freaked out because it was so quiet. She didn't know what to do. And we kind of left her alone, didn't make her do anything. It was like the first time in her life where she wasn't like this little adult trying to take care of all these problems in her life. And it freaked her out because it was so quiet in her. And so anyways, she went to school, got her AA, and then right when she finished, she got a job at Wells Fargo. And she's like, so as much as all this is going on, she's probably the most outgoing and socially talented girl that I've ever met. And so just would encourage her in that. Just, if you get a degree, people are going to love you so much. You're going to explode in any career that you get in. So starts Wells Fargo, a few years in, starts as a trainer, a few years in, wins customer service year of the year award, and gets flown to Florida for the first time and gets celebrated as one of the best employees at Wells Fargo, which they need because they have problems. Yeah. And so then she kind of got stuck and in this position she didn't really want to be in. She wanted to move to that next step, and she kind of got stuck because she doesn't have a full degree yet. And so often I just see kids get stuck and they don't have the resilience to keep in it. And man, she joined a leadership group in Wells Fargo. She did all these things, all the right things, got her resume, got it checked, got it rewritten, and she just got hired on this executive team, and now is taking like the highest complaints at Wells Fargo and is moving to a different office. And it's just, I just love her, and there's just these kids that I love, all the kids I've worked with, but just so proud and in awe of her resilience. I would have fallen apart years ago. So
this is the best thing about working with Fringe kids is when they get it, they are the most resilient folks you're ever going to meet. And it's weird because it takes a while to light the fire under their butts. But once they catch it, man, I think it's something in all of us Fringe kids, that, we've seen the other side of things a lot of times. We've seen how crappy the world can be. And so when we're given a chance at hope, we run for it. And that's not all Fringe kids. I mean, again, we've shared plenty of stories of Tales on the Fringe. There's plenty of heartbreaks out there. But the ones who do get it, they get it, and they become inspiring. Like the person you start off as, you're teaching them, they become the lesson of your life. And I have plenty of stories of that. But I love, did you say Jessica? Is that her name? Or
yeah, Jessica.
Jessica. Hopefully Jessica listens.
Name changed for confidentiality.
Confidentiality, that's true. AKA Jessica, hopefully you can let her know that you bragged on her on the podcast. She's amazing.
And, but like you said, for every, I meet with kids who are just still stuck, and that's the truth too, so anyways, but.
And there's no support. That's the problem, is they just don't have the support system. And I think it's one of the hard things that there's so many kids that I work with, they have such good support. Like they can literally, get caught doing drugs, driving a car that they stole. They could get into some terrible fight after a football game, and any of these things could happen to them, and they're going to be okay because they have so many adult people advocating for them. This is a good kid. They've got a bright future. They have all that stuff. And for every one of those kids, there's these other kids who are one MIP, minor in possession, away from, a spiraling out of control trajectory change, bad life. And I think that this is what's so great about Fringe Workers is we become that support system, and we become their cheerleaders and the people who are mentoring and bringing them along. So that's good work. That's good. That's
what
good
do you got,
word,
TJ?
and that's good work. Okay, so my tale from the Fringe is my first church that I worked in. It was tiny, about 40 people, and they were mostly elderly people. And they had decided that their church was going to die when they died, unless they get a youth ministry. And so they were like, hey, let's go hire a youth pastor. Well, they didn't have any money to do that. So what they did is they put a cell phone tower on their property, right? On the church property. And they just promised the Lord that they would pay whatever stipend that the cell phone company gave them, they'd give to the youth pastor. So the first job, I got actually paid by Singular. I don't know if you guys remember Singular, but it was a cell phone. I think it merged with T-Mobile or something like that. But Singular was providing my first youth pastor paycheck, and we actually called that youth ministry the Tower for multiple reasons, for metaphorical and very literal reasons. That is not what the story is about, but we were building that ministry up. And forever, it just felt like a small group. I remember one time I was preaching. This is just kind of give you the flavor of what I'm going to tell you next. I was preaching, and I had just gotten out of Bible college. And you do youth group like this. You set up chairs, and they all point towards the speaker, and you get up and you give a 3-point talk, and they listen and take notes, and then tell you how great you are afterwards. Well, there was 4 kids at this youth group, and I'm like, well, let's be the youth group we want to be. Let's set the pace here. So if we have 4 or 40, we're still going to run at the same program. I was stupid and young and naive, and I should have just put us in a circle and been a small group until we weren't a small group anymore. But I'm preaching, and so there's 3 girls and there's 1 guy, right? And that guy's pretty happy because there's 3 girls and just 1 of him. But that whole thing that happens when a girl has to go to the restroom and all of her friends have to go with her. So all of a sudden, right in the middle of my 3-point sermon, one of the girls has to go use the restroom, and 3 of the 4 kids get up, and it's just left with me preaching at 1 kid and my wife sitting at the back of the room. And that was the moment that I realized I needed to change something about what I was going to do. That isn't the story. That is a good story, and it could stand on its own. But we'd grown significantly. And actually, we'd just gotten this ministry to the point where it was actually bigger than the church on Sundays, right? So the church was like 40 white hairs, and all of a sudden we were running 50 within a 6-month period. So I had figured some things out since that first youth group, but they're all non-church kids. They're all fringe kids. They're all kids who don't come to church. And so it was this incredibly interesting dynamic where I have a church youth group. It's awesome and it's powerful, and they know nothing about the Bible or anything like that. And they're rough kids, but man, I love them. Some of my favorite kids of all time come from this group. And so I decided to throw my first all-nighter because, we have the power to pull this thing off. Right. And first of all, every youth worker stands on one side of the aisle of youth work. And you want to go back and listen to Brit and I's thing. We talk about lock-ins a little bit here. So I do my first lock-in.
I was on Brit's side.
You're like, no more. You were flicking lock-ins. Yeah.
I'm done.
Okay. So yes, I'm at this lock-in, and I have like 3 or 4 helpers at this point, and I'm figuring they're all going to stay there for the night. And one of them had a weird night job, and so he couldn't show up, right? He got called into work. So it was just me and 3 other people, and one of them was Britt, and Britt was actually working on her master's degree back then, and so she had to go home and work on some stuff. So she's gone. So then it's me and these two other guys, and they get to the point at like 1 o'clock in the morning, and they're in the lock-in phase, and they just didn't realize what they'd signed up for, and they both kind of come to me about 10 minutes apart from each other and say, "Hey, I need to go home because I can't make this thing." And I'm like looking at them saying like, I need to go home too, but someone has to be here for these 40 fringe kids that we have running around this old person church, and they somehow bail on me, right? So here I am, Tim. One dude, 40 kids, none of them know how to do this thing, and it's 4 a.m. It's 4 a.m., and I figured like, and this is before we banned energy drinks at these things. Youth pastor hack right here is if you're going to do a lock-in, do not let them have energy drinks, or you won't be able to keep up with the energy there. Well, I just was like, no, whatever, you guys, you'll fall asleep when I fall asleep. No, they're just slamming monsters back, just hitting them so hard. And so I'm sitting on the church steps, like how some stages have like steps that you can go up there, and I'm sitting there, and I realize I close my eyes, and then I open them really quick. And I realized I had just fallen asleep, and I don't know how long I had just fallen asleep for. And I realized that, the kids were not asleep during this time. And I looked down at my watch, and like 20 minutes has gone by, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I get up, and I walk around, I find all the kids. None of them are dead. The church isn't on fire. And then I sit down again, and my eyes start to close again. And I realize, like, I'm done, right? Like, I'm going to fall asleep. And I pray the most desperate prayer that I've ever prayed in my whole life, Tim. I say, God, I'm going to fall asleep. I just pray that these kids don't kill anybody or damage anything.
Oh my gosh.
And I fall asleep. And to this day, I don't know what happened between 5 o'clock and 9 o'clock when I woke up. I'm glad I don't work for that church anymore, because that was like, first of all, policy. Never ever put yourself in a situation where it's 1 on 4.
The liability.
There's so many bad things that could have happened. I was 22. I was a 22-year-old dummy, and I would never do it again. But the Lord did answer that prayer. No one died. I don't think anybody has any lasting traumatic things, but if they do, you probably could learn how to treat those things with TreeHouse.
And 9 months later, you had doubled your youth group.
I don't know. Well, and all of a sudden we had a children's ministry. No. I don't think anything like that happened either. Hopefully nothing like that happened. Anyway, that's my fringe, my tale from the fringe. Hey guys, go online today at some point and ask. We're going to ask this question, and you're going to see it on there. But what is one moment in youth work when you failed? You failed big time. Like, what is one moment that you look back on and you go, I could and should have been fired. Something terrible should have happened in this moment, and God somehow rescued you and sustained you through it. We want to know. We want to know what your biggest youth pastor fails, but I'm still standing stories are. All right, here we go. This isn't the rando's favorite segment, but this is easily my favorite segment. This is Pick It or Flick It, which again, that's a metaphor of a booger. But in that metaphor, you're both picking and flicking, so it doesn't make any sense. But anyway, they rhyme. So this is a place where we're gonna just say some topics, and we're both gonna have a take on it, and we have to say if we're picking it, like we like this thing, or we are flicking it. And I think this is maybe our fourth. This will be our fourth time doing it. And we have some really awesome topics for you guys to go this. My question for you, Tim, are you ready for this? Oh,
I was born ready.
That's something my dad used to always say. I was born ready. That was like his go-to thing. So I'm glad you brought me back to my dad's little moment here. All right. You ready? First topic. Jeopardy. Alex Trebek, Jeopardy. Are you picking or are you flicking it? Why?
I flick because I've maybe watched a total, if you combine all the times I've flipped through, maybe 3 minutes of Jeopardy. So I'm not even sure how to play or the premise of Jeopardy, other than I think in like first grade we used the format of Jeopardy to learn some things about history. Other than that, I know nothing about Jeopardy, so it's a flick. Sorry.
I just doubt that there's any youth worker out there who's like picking Jeopardy, because it just doesn't seem like it's part of our tribe, right? You know, like it's like you don't hear like when they do the whole like awkward Alex goes over and talks to the people, and you never hear it's like I'm an engineer or I'm a PhD student this, or I'm a writer or whatever. You never hear like, yeah, I'm a youth pastor. It just doesn't happen. Like we're not killing it on Jeopardy. So I'm guessing it was going to be a flick for you. I don't know, man. It's not like I'm great at Jeopardy, and it's not like it's a go-to for me. But I definitely pick it because there's so many things I love about it. First of all, like I love how awkward almost everybody is on Jeopardy. And so there's this beautiful moment that sort of happens like in the middle of the show, like after the first round or in the middle of the first round, actually. And Alex goes over and kind of introduces everybody, and he kind of has this like little bit of just back and forth with all of these people. And all the time, man, it makes for the most beautifully awkward things that happen. It's just beautifully awkward stuff. And it reminds me so much of working with middle schoolers. It reminds me so much of just how socially awkward students are. And Alex isn't like an incredible, like he's great at the show, but he's not like a conversationalist, but he is kind of funny. So you learn to love him in those moments. So, and I've used the Jeopardy format for some games, like when like some game nights, we've done some Jeopardy things. So you're a flick on that. I'm a pick. And right now, like someone's like broken Jeopardy. Like they just keep on winning. And so apparently he's going for the record this week. So that's a cool thing that's happening.
Are you telling me that on a weekly basis you sit down and watch the whole show?
No.
Okay.
No, I
stopped watching the Fringe or listening to the Fringe. That was it for me.
No. So it's not a go-to for me, but if I'm flicking through the channels and it just came on Netflix actually recently, and I've actually watched, just chosen into it at some points, but I was raised by my grandparents. In so many ways, like not like that, but I had really active grandparents in my life, right? And my grandparents loved Wheel of Fortune, which, they're blood brothers, they're it's the two things that kind of happen together. And I never, like, my grandparents loved loved Wheel of Fortune. I never got into that. I don't have the brain for that. But there's something I always dug about Jeopardy. And so, like, again, it's not a go-to for me, but I have chosen into it, so it is a pick for me. But I just, there's a lot to love, I think, about Jeopardy.
It's a safe place for you, it sounds like. It's nice.
We're going to turn this into a support group here. I don't know. If this guy's broken Jeopardy, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Okay, anyway, let's move on. All right. I got another one here for you. This is a big one right now. Game of Thrones. Are you picking or are you flicking this one?
Oh, man. This, I don't know if you're on the DYM Facebook, but someone posted about this and saying, how can people say they watch this?
Yeah.
And then it was just vitriol, just either one side or the other saying, I can't believe you'd watch this. You're so judgmental. And so, man, this is a heated topic. I'm going to have to say I've watched them all.
Okay.
And let's see.
The reason I brought this up with you is because you don't work for a church currently, so there's not going to be a whole lot of backlash coming your way if you say that you've watched it or haven't watched it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would say I pick it.
Okay.
It's a pretty epic story. It has great character development. It has great human story about it. So I really enjoy that piece of it. But I also recognize that there's garbage in the midst of it.
Yeah.
So, I was saying how much I kind of enjoyed pieces of it, and my mother-in-law said, "Oh, I should watch that." I said, "You should never, ever watch that. Your opinion of me will lower. You'll
oh man,
yeah."
Oh, bro, yeah, yeah.
Sorry I ever said anything. So I'm gonna pick it, but I totally understand if people are judging me and condemning me right now.
Oh man, now I have to have a take on this. I wanted to hear your take, but I didn't want to give my take on this one. So I've watched some of Game of Thrones just because it's
just the ones without nudity. That's the only ones you've watched.
Yeah, I mean that's it. I mean, and it's a cultural phenom, right? It's like when Breaking Bad was a thing, or when Lost was a thing, and when The Office was a thing. Like you had to you don't have to, but you hear about it enough and you see about it enough. You're like, okay, what's going on over there? I watched a few, but in the end, for me, it was like there was just too much nudity, like to justify the great storytelling. Because for me, I loved Breaking Bad, and I thought that had some of the best character developments of all times in a series that way. And they didn't have to throw in the random nude scene here and there. And so for me, I had to steal something from John Chris. I had to check my heart, realize I wasn't strong enough to kind of get through it. All right. Personality tests.
What's the Enneagram? Man, people love that thing.
Yeah.
Holy Moses. It's like Jesus, the Enneagram, and then to worship music. I don't know. It's up there.
It's here's a better way to say it. It's like the Bible and then the Enneagram, right? And then it's like,
there you go.
And it's what number was Moses? I hear that stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh, and so here's a personal problem of mine. This is a personal problem. I don't drink the Kool-Aid. It's a problem. Mm-hmm. So if there are too many people doing something, I instantly feel like it's garbage, without any proof, without any kind of background. I know that about myself. I always have to check it. What I know to be true is it's been super helpful for people that I respect and care about, and so if it's been helpful, I'm sure that it's great. I have found Strength Finders to be exceptionally helpful for me to identify my strengths and sometimes how those can become my weaknesses. And I've seen for students too how when you talk about the thing that they're really good at, and especially around strengths or how God made them, that they can come alive in that, because so often they're finding by just looking around at other people or movie stars or athletes and trying to be like them versus how they particularly are made. So it can be really helpful. You gotta take it with a grain of salt. I think it's a little much at times, but so I'm gonna pick them. I think as long as you have the right, you hold them lightly, but they can be really helpful.
So I'm gonna flick them. I think it's horoscopes for smart people. That's what I think it is. I think it's another way for millennials to be all about themselves, and to talk about themselves constantly. And my wife just went to Thrive, which is in Atlanta at the North Point. It's a big conference over there. And she came back with their version. It's not the Enneagram, right? But it's what color are you? And they have 4 different colors that you have to fit. And it's all part of their DNA of their church and what Andy Stanley's doing now. And it's and my wife's like, you're a yellow. And I'm like, you don't call me yeller, it was, it's one of those situations, when I was in college, man, I took the Myers-Briggs test probably 10 times. And it was not because I wanted to, but because every professor, and again, these guys are PhDs. they wanted to know, they just thought it was so incredibly helpful to figure out what your personality type is. Now, I know there's science behind it. I know that it's more than a horoscope. I know that it's like kind of true in some regards. And I've read the things and said, yeah, that's kind of me. And so I'm not like fully like hating the fact that it is, but I wonder how much of explanation becomes excuse, right? Like, so you can explain why you have these tics in your personality. So then you can also excuse them. And I'm kind of like, maybe you do have a propensity for gossip, but it's still kind of a sin. So maybe we can understand, but not be quick to, write it off as, oh, that's just their personality. So I would say there is.
Is there a personality type that gossips? I'm not aware of that personality.
No, just like on the things of like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is, but there's where explanation meets excuse. Like the reason I, do this is because it's my personality type. And I'm just like, nah, you do that because you're a broken, sinful creature. And I do bad things too, because I'm a broken, sinful creature. And so we got to kind of repent of those things. But again, like I know that it's more than a horoscope, obviously, or a fortune cookie. I just think
I'm just glad that you flicked that, because people now have forgotten that I picked King of Thrones or whatever, Game of Thrones.
King of Thrones. Okay.
Yeah. Now they're hating you.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
That's good.
That's true. I just can't. You know what? Yeah. I just lost like half our listeners. Half our listeners like, I'm not gonna. And you know what? No, you know what actually happened there? Half our listeners just figured out what number I am. They're like, oh, he's totally, this guy is so 6. I don't know what they are. My wife says I'm a 3, so that's probably true to what I am. Anyway, I'm not a big fan. All right, one more, and then we gotta call it off for tonight. How about we do CrossFit? Let's hit them all tonight. Where you at with CrossFit?
CrossFit. Hey, I think I know what this is. You like flip tires and like do pull-ups on like in a warehouse, but not a gym. They're all like in a warehouse or outside, right? So I grew up playing football, and I did some of this stuff when I was training to play in college, and it was helpful. So I don't know. I mean, whatever gets you to work out, I don't care. Okay. So for myself, I flick it, but I don't care if other people pick it. I just need to work out. So that would be my pick. Just doing something more than walking. Mm-hmm. That would be amazing. So I'm going to flick it for myself, but it's fine if people pick it up.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that same boat with it. It's like, it seems like it really helps certain people. And I've seen a lot of my friends get really in shape because of it. It seems to have an addiction personality thing. I don't know. Going back to personalities here, it calls to certain people in a certain way. And there are so many people who become all about it. Like it becomes their church. And I think that like as humans, we're kind of prone towards addictions anyway. So that there's some of us who, we need to chill out on the CrossFit a little bit. But most humans need to work out. So if that's what's doing it for you, all right. I personally probably need to work out more. So, if there's a CrossFit coach out there who wants to contact me and get me into shape, then, I'm not gonna deny your help. But right now I'm in a flick mode. So, CrossFit flicking it.
I'm gonna flick any social media, posting about your CrossFit. I don't want to see that.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, like I saw like the other day, I was like, there was these people who were all dressed in their CrossFit shirts, and they were outside their gym, and they were all carrying like bags of potatoes or something like that through one of the towns that I was just going through, right? And it looked like just a bunch of people who, like, for some reason didn't bag their groceries and are now carrying it, but they're panting, and they got people, who are out there like, you got this. And in my head, I'm like, why do we have to? Why do we have to have the CrossFit parade? You know, like, come on, why is this got to block traffic so that this Yahoo can bring some potatoes across the street? That's where there's the angry old man in me right there. It's like, just keep it in your gym, you know. So,
I'm seeing why you connect with kids on the fringes.
Yeah, that's right. All right, guys, I want to thank Tim Cryer for coming on the show and being our interview / co-host this week. Again, go check out TreeHouse. Make sure that if you need to, we'll put Tim's information in the show notes so you can contact him and maybe get your churches to a place where they can check out what TreeHouse has got to offer. This is the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Fringe Youth Worker Podcast. Don't believe anything my dad